you're all doing well and staying healthy in this really crazy season. I wanted to share a little encouragement with you guys on this idea of flourishing. Now, flourishing isn't just us living or just merely existing, right? It's this idea of us living well, living vibrantly. But I don't know about you guys, this has been a difficult season to feel like I'm flourishing. I'm home all day, not able to see certain friends and family, not able to worship with you guys physically, right? These are all kind of things that have been difficult in this season. But what I love is how the Bible shows us and demonstrates that when we are in a relationship with God, we can flourish in all seasons of life. And one of the passages that really demonstrates that well is two passages, actually. It's Psalm 1 and Psalm 2. These passages work together as kind of the introduction and thesis statement of the Psalms. And Psalm 1 introduces this idea that human flourishing is ultimately founded by meditating on God's law. That's how the psalm opens up. It says the one who is blessed is the one who meditates on God's law. Now, God's law can be the Ten Commandments, it can be the Torah, but really what it's ultimately about broadly is this idea of how God has dealt with Israel, right? The whole history and story of Israel, his promises, his great acts like in the Exodus and in Joshua as well, right? And how he's shaped his people into a community. So to meditate on God's law isn't just to read it and forget it in one ear and out the other. It's to fully embrace and understand how we ourselves fit into God's great story of redemption. Right? In fact, the Psalms talk about how when we meditate, we're like a tree that's planted near a stream and constantly pulling water from the stream in order to bear fruit in all seasons. I like how one scholar puts it, where he compares it to chewing on God's law, right? Chewing. So you're getting all the textures of the food, its taste as well, and its nutrients as well. You're just experiencing all of that. Now, this flourishing of the blessed who are meditating on God's law is then contrasted with the wicked who kind of pursue and follow their own way. Now, the psalm has said that the blessed are like this, really strong, fruitful tree, but the wicked are like chaff. Now, chaff isn't even like a grain. It's like the husk, like, that little paper wrapping around corn. It's that wrapping that goes around a piece of grain. And so the psalmist is saying it's not even a grain. It's like this little piece of wrapping that you throw off and peel off a grain, and the wind goes and takes it somewhere else. But if I'm being honest, there are a lot of seasons where I don't feel like that strong, fruitful tree. I feel more like the husk, more like the chaff, and everyone else around me are like these fruitful trees. But the thing is that we see here in the psalm, to be a tree that's fruitful in all seasons, as it says, right, doesn't mean that we're always on this sort of great camp high. It doesn't mean we're always feeling super awesome and enthusiastic and great. It doesn't always mean that we feel like we're flourishing. A fruitful tree is rooted in God's word. Now, according to verse 3, trees that bear fruit in all seasons are those that are planted by streams. See, in a Middle Eastern climate, you have these intensely dry seasons where it's difficult for the trees to bear fruit and they're not receiving a lot of water because it's so dry. And so the only way for them to receive water is if they're planted by a stream and pulling water from that stream as well. And so in the same way, when we are in a dry season of life, what we need to do is make sure that we are constantly meditating, constantly embracing how we are part of God's great story and meditating on his law. But what I love about the Psalms is how they test this idea over and over again. You have this wide genre of Psalms within the book of Psalms, right? Praise Psalms, Thanksgiving Psalms, and even 1/3 of these Psalms are known as a genre called lament, which is this deep expression of grief, anguish, a darkness of the soul, so to speak, right? And what happens is that even though these people are in deep, deep hurt, even though these psalmists are in deep, deep pain, they're constantly going back to God, even in the midst of their hurt. And their language can be pretty shocking for us because we don't have a lot of worship songs like this, right? But the idea is that when we are in our deepest hurt, God has room for our lament. Now, Psalm 2 builds off this idea of the flourishing blessed and introduces this character, the Lord's Son. Now, you might notice the word Lord there is in all caps, and that's an English translation of God's own divine name. It's God's own holy divine name. Right? It's the name he gives to Moses in the Exodus. So this is no ordinary son, but the very Son of God. And so Psalm 2 closes with this idea in Psalm 1, where Psalm 1 says, the blessed are those who meditate on God's laws. Psalm 2 closes with the idea of the blessed are also those who find refuge in God's Son. I don't know what kind of season you guys are in right now. You might be in a really dry desert season of anxiety, of boredom, of just feeling disconnected. But I want you to note that God invites you today to drink deeply from his stream and find refuge in his Son. We love you guys. We're praying for you, and we can't wait to see you guys soon.